When you won the Oscar in 2014 and you gave that speech, I had a ritual at that time in my life where I listened to your speech every day for 30 days and maybe even a bit longer. And it was so powerful and profound. And when I read your book, it was exactly what I was looking for because I wanted that speech to never end. I wanted it to kind of like go in so many different directions. So anyone who hasn't heard that speech, go listen to it. If you have heard it, you know what I'm talking about. And the book literally feels like a never-ending version of that speech, which is beautiful.
Bravo. Great. I love hearing that translation.
It's very true. So I wanted to start there. And before we dive into the book in chronological order, I was going to pick this out because on page 73, you say, I started to believe my life's calling was to become a monk. Now, I don't know if you know this, but I lived as a monk for 3 years in India. And so when I read that, I was just like, I have to find out about this. And so I wanted to hear, why was that your calling, or why did you feel that was your life's calling at one point? And have you ever thought about it again?
Yes. Well, that came to me at a time when I was having a very introspective, forced winter of a year in Australia as I was an exchange student. And it was a very unsettling year for me. I was alone in a foreign place. I was, struggling with my own identity. I didn't have all the crutches or things that I could rely on around me: friends, car, cash, a job, mom, dad. I didn't have any of those things. So I was forced to rely on myself, and forced inward. It was a real year of resistance. Now in that, and I was going a tad bit insane, I think it's fair to say. I started to create daily disciplines for myself. And as you know, when we're sort of lost, creating daily disciplines to give you a tangible measurement of, okay, I ran 6 miles today. For me, I was a runner. I went vegetarian. I didn't know how to do it and was looking for my calling. And at the time I was like, I'm going to go over to South Africa and help free Nelson Mandela. I'm going to become a monk. I think that's my calling. And I talked to a very good friend of mine, Brother Christian, who is a monk, about that. And he was like, well, you have really great communication skills, Matthew. I think that I admire what you're calling to go do that, but maybe your way is to be in what you're doing in life, to communicate more and not become a hermit or a monk. And to answer your last question, it is something that I still consider and remind myself that I still have time to try and do it if that's my goal.
I love that, man. That's beautiful. And I'm glad you stayed on the path you did, as you've gone on to definitely use those communication skills extremely effectively. And with the book, so the book's called Green Lights. Like I said, it was a joy reading it. And this analogy that you create of green lights, talk to us about what is a green light, but more deeply, for me, what I'm fascinated by is, how do you know when something's a green light? And sometimes do we miss them? Like, do we miss green lights as well?
Absolutely. We miss them all the time. Sometimes they're right in front of us. We don't see them daily because we're not in a place to receive them, to recognize them, to be aware of them, to see a certain situation. Sometimes we see red and yellow lights where they're actually green lights. Sometimes we slow down and stop, or feel like we're getting stopped when it's actually, no, it was free. There was no glass on the floor. You could pass through that dark hallway. It was a free ride, whatever that may be. A lot of times I know that we can create green lights, engineer them for our future by the choices we make daily. I call it, it's a version of delayed gratification. It's a version of ROI, return on our investments. It's like teeing ourselves up, being kind to our future self, teeing up more green lights in our future. They're based on a mix of responsibility and freedom, the choices we make, compounding assets of our future. If we, for instance, we could decide to say, I'm going to lie, cheat, steal, get a short money green light right now for me. Well, you're actually teeing up yellow and red lights in the future, because everywhere you go, you got to look over your shoulder and go, oh, is someone here that I lied, cheat, and stole from? And the cops are after me, whatever that may be, as a metaphor. If we take care of our business today, it can be simple thing. Here's a simple green light thing. Put your coffee in your coffee filter the night before you go to bed. You're so happy the next morning just to press that button, because sometimes it's hard to make your coffee when you hadn't had your coffee. So there can be simple little green lights where you tee yourself up for be more success and ease in the future. And then, like I said, sometimes you can engineer them. Sometimes they will just fall in our lap. And how do we find them? I've found that we find them by either enduring through something, or pivoting and having another look at something a different way, or raising the white flag and saying, I'm going to live to fight another day because I'm going to fight another battle here. The tool for getting to them that I bring up in the book is, when faced with the inevitable, get relative. So when do we deem something inevitable? A situation like now, we're in COVID. It's inevitable. So you and I can sit here and go, oh my God, when's this going to end? I wish this was over. I wish we were back in the good old days. Nothing constructive in anything I just said. Nothing leading towards a green light. But can we say and recognize, like you did offline before we got on this, hey, it's really been a still, quiet time for me right now. I've been taking inventory. That's recognizing a green light in the red light we're in right now, and setting yourself up for that to remain a green light, to make this useful time in whatever way you can. You're already cultivating and building a green light for your future in this red light time. So in that version, another truth that I believe is that every red and yellow light does reveal itself to be green somewhere in the rearview mirror of life. Sometimes we notice it today, sometimes next week, next month, next year, sometimes on our deathbed, sometimes maybe our great, 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 great grandkids will actually be the first recipients of the green light of some red light we had in our own life.
That's beautiful. I love that. I love the fact that it may outlive us. Like, we may not even get to see it. Like, I think there's some real power in that, because I think we have such an obsession with seeing, feeling, holding, experiencing, grabbing, having. And what you're actually saying is that if you're planting that seed right now for that green light, you may never actually experience it as the green light, but someone in that legacy or lineage will get to experience it.
My father died in 1992. Major red light in my life. Red light for quite a while. I read, and going through writing the book, I looked at the diaries. I was like, oh, with him passing away, the values that you kind of had learned from him, that you were doing, a decent job of living by, but not really. Why wasn't I really doing a good job? Because I had him to rely on. He was alive. He was my safety net. He was above government and law to me. So Dad's there. I'll be okay. I don't have to really commit. I don't really have to man up to this situation. I don't really have to have the courage to do this, because my Dad's here. He's got my back. Whoop, lost him. Oh, he's not here. Uh-oh. And all of a sudden, everything that I revered, all the mortal things in life that I revered, came down to eye level. All the things that I was condescending and patronizing, looking down upon, rose up to eye level. The world was flat. I could see further, wider, and clearer. I gained courage, confidence, kindness, became more my true self and was more truthful. I don't believe I would have done that. I know I wouldn't have if my dad was still alive at that point. Maybe I would have done it another time in life, but his passing, that red light passing, revealed early green lights for me. And now in hindsight, I'm like, I don't know if I'd be here. I don't know if I'd have the family I have. I don't know if I'd be who I was if my dad would not have passed. So it's not about denying the red light. It's not about covering up and saying, oh, it didn't happen. No, it happened. And it's a red light. But even the one we're in now, there's a great chance we have the opportunity to look back at 2020, the most awkward and tragic year that we can remember, as a banner year of rebirth and change, and in a year that really moved our floor. It's not a guarantee that we use it, but we have an opportunity to. And it's the seeds of those green lights. We're living in them right now. We may not know what they are.
Yeah, no, that's it's the most empowering perspective that we can live with. And it's not even just and I know you consider yourself an optimist. I wouldn't even say that perspective is just being optimistic. It's actually being the most introspecting and, like you're saying, going inward to try and change that experience. But tell us you talked about your father and your relationship there. Tell us about how that was like in your childhood, when obviously you wanted to make him proud, you wanted to, make him feel something, and he had these expectations. How did you align with those expectations, or was it different?
I don't think I aligned with those expectations for a while. So I've got two older brothers.
Yeah.
My older brother, Rooster, is 16 years older than me. My dad was he's trying to raise his young boys into men, and he did a good job of that. He had expectations of that. He also believed in rite of passage and initiations. And sometimes those were physical. and physical encounters with him. Or at least he always told us, hey, you want a buck? You don't like how things are being run under this household? You know where to find the boss. I'm right here, ready whenever you are. My older brother took him up on that at about young 20s. And from that day on, they were best friends. And my dad he was looking for his boys to it was more that we would accept the challenge, have the courage to accept the challenge. That was it. That would have made him. I failed to do that a couple of times early in my life. I chickened out. And, in hindsight, I kind of regret that I did, because he would have probably hugged me as soon as I said, all right, Pop, I'm taking you on. He'd have probably been like, that's my boy, and gave me a great hug. And then it would have been over and we'd have moved on. So I was raised more by my mother. My dad became more successful at work, so I had to be on the road more. He and I kind of got to know each other for the first time. It was one summer in the middle of my mom and dad's second divorce where he and I lived in a trailer park together, and I kind of got to know him pretty good then. But I was very young then. The first time I really got to know him as somewhat of an adult was around 18 or 19. And we got to spend some time together, and I was of age to go have a beer with him at the bar or hang around his friends and be a part of the stories I was hearing instead of just hearing about the stories the next day. And one night we were walking out of this bar, and I remember he was rocking right behind me. And as I passed out the door frame and headed into the parking lot, this bouncer stepped behind me and put his hand on my dad's chest and said, "Did you pay your tab, sir?" My dad was a big man, and I saw my dad kind of look down at his hand and kind of slough it off and go, "Yeah, bud," because we had paid the tab. We did pay the tab. But as he moved that hand, and the image I had looking over my shoulder of another man putting his hand on my dad's chest, as my dad was about to go tell this guy, "Hey, bud, don't put your hands on me." Before that could even happen, I pounced this guy. I pounced this bouncer. Next thing I knew, I was being pulled off of him, and he was down on the floor 20 feet back in the bar over a table on his back.
What?
And it all just happened. And I remember that night, I got pulled off, and I'm kicking and screaming and groveling, and I hear this voice in my ear, "That's enough, son. That's enough." And it was my dad. Well, that was a bit of a rite of passage for me in his eyes. I remember him calling all of his friends. "Oh, hey, the youngest one, he's going to be okay." I was worried about him. He's going to be okay. You got to watch him. He's got a bit of a berserker switch. And I remember that being like that act of taking that chance and that risk physically was a rite of passage for him. And that's when he and I really became more buddies, and he was less my father to son. But then the sad thing is he moved on quite soon after that. After I went to college, but he's in a few other great stories where he gave me some real privilege and freedom and approval of what I was trying to be in life.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, it's interesting because you speak about in the book so many almost challenging situations that you went through early on, whether it was being blackmailed for sex, molested, but one of the things you said after that was you were like, "I've never felt like a victim in my life." And I was intrigued by that juxtaposition because one could look at a lot of those situations and feel that it was valid. Where were you able to not see yourself as a victim, or what was that? And how have you done that in a healthy way?
Yeah. I mean, we could argue, and it's worth the world right now. It's in the conversation, defining victimhood.
Yeah.
Could you say in those situations I was a victim? Sure. I said I never felt I was a victim. I never chose to say, "Oh, I've been victimized." That may mean in your book or someone else's book, legitimately, I was a victim. So I'm not trying to illegitimate the word victim.
Yeah. No, I didn't think
I chose not to feel like I was a victim, and I did not. I understood when I got molested that time that was a bad thing, that was not how life worked. I was old enough to not be super confused about it. I was old enough to be pissed off because I had just come conscious and this person was in this situation. I was old enough to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was also old enough to know that's not how most of the world works. So it wasn't a confusing thing for me. So I was able to go, whew, I'm glad I came to, when I did and got the hell out of there. Another, what was the other one? the blackmailing
Yeah,
sex.
yeah.
Geez, it wasn't ideal, man. And I write a really interesting thing after that. Do you remember the line after that? I said, at the time, I was sure I was going to hell. Now,
I know what you say after that.
I only hope that isn't the case.
Yes. Yeah, that was funny.
That was the worst part about it is I thought I was going to be, I thought I was raised to be a virgin until you're married.
Yeah.
And not only was I no longer a virgin until I was married, I had been blackmailed into it, and I felt guilt and shame and all this stuff, and it was not ideal. But I chose not to say, well, that's my lot. That's what my relationship with sexual intercourse will always be. I chose not to, to just feel victimized in that, and chose to try and turn the page, found healthy relationships, healthy sexual relationships. And, then once I got old enough, my mom was like, oh, I know, we were just trying to make sure you weren't going to, we were preaching that, but I figured you might do it before you got married. And that's another thing right there. What we're doing right here, I think a part of why I never felt like a victim is you and I just laughed at that. And on paper, you go, wait a minute, where's the joke? There's nothing funny about that. But let's recognize what we just did. Did you and I just deny the severity of what happened?
Not at all.
No. If anything, we dealt with it, and I can see it more clearly. Humor is such a revealer of truth, and it's I think it's good for us all to remember. And I got to remind myself all the time, man. If you laugh at something, if you find humor in the situation, it can be incredibly great truth. Some of the best truth comes out. It doesn't deny the crisis. It doesn't erase it. It doesn't wax over it and say, oh, I'm just living in the clouds. I'm a foolish optimist. No, it's more than a survival technique. It's actually a way of understanding. Anyway, that happened right there. That's another thing that's been a real good intrinsic value that I've had and been raised around, and which is in having a sense of humor to reveal the truth in situations.
And the book has that moment as you're reflecting or recalibrating on a lot of the themes that are there in the book. And I was thinking about that the other day, that I was talking to someone about it. I was like, I feel that way about both laughter and tears. Like they're almost two things we try and hold back. Like we're like, oh, you can't cry about that, or you can't laugh about that. And actually sometimes those are the two best things to do about most of those scenarios in life.
And why not do it more and more? I know we're trying to raise our kids to say, hey, I tell them a story, and this is part of why I finally went to film school in college. I started keeping a diary because I would go to the theater and it'd be a packed house, and I would laugh at the joke that nobody else in the theater laughed at. The whole theater would laugh at the joke that I was like, I didn't think that was funny. I was finding I was not crying when someone close died. I was crying when someone was born. And I was going, is this okay? Am I weird? Am I off? And I was like, no, lean into that. It's okay. And let's start writing these things down about how you feel about particular situations, Matthew, and started to write those down and then find some confidence to go, that's okay. Talk to my parents, talk to friends about them. They were like, no, that's different, but that's, keep writing down those unique sides of yourself. And that's a good point. We try to raise our kids, hey, laugh, cry, whenever. Come on, let it out. Let it be part of the conversation. It goes along with people say, oh, don't, that old adage, don't talk to yourself. I'm like, what? No, do talk to yourself. Just remember to answer. Talk to yourself all you want. Just answer.
I love that. Just answer. That's true. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. And actually that's half the challenge, right? Like all of these like old kind of rules or statements or whatever it may be kind of block that thinking. But what you were doing by writing it down, and I love that. And I love how much of the book is like literally looks like scribbles of your writing and your journals and your annotation, which I get fascinated by. But that was you when you talk about the concept of knowing who you are is hard and eliminating who you're not first. It's when you start writing these things down that you start constructing who you are and deconstructing who you're not.
Yes. That was it. And it was, look, I look at my early diaries. I was writing when I first started, like 15, right before I started writing those things down, like a theater of how my own personal response was to situations. When do most of us go to a diary? When we're having problems. Dear diary, so-and-so broke up with me. It broke my heart. The stuff I won't say to anybody else is just between me and you. Hard times. Early 20s, I started to notice that when I would find my groove and get rolling on something and was successful and was waking up in the morning, looking forward to heading out into the day and having good human interactions with people and was succeeding at school. And so I was like, you hadn't written in your diary in a while. Just like, when do we pray? Yeah. Usually when we're in trouble, right? And you got to say, well, all right, I've been dissecting my failures. I think I need to start writing stuff down and make sure I take the time to write stuff down when things are going well so I can dissect my successes in the hopes that when I get into another rut again in the future, which I will, I can go back to my diaries and go, what were my habits back then when I felt like I was rolling?
Yeah.
And you can find a bit of science to that satisfaction. Yeah. It can be who you're hanging out with, where you were going, how late you were staying up, what you were eating.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It can be all kinds of things. You can find a science too. I'm going to get back in that groove again. And it can help nudge you back. It's never the same, but it can help get you back in your lane. So, this identity, who are you? It's a tough question to answer. What is easier and more fun is to go, all right, if I'm not sure who I am, let me answer who I'm not. What are those people, places, and things that are giving me a hangover or not feeding me back or not bringing out my truest self? Well, you know what? I'm going to eliminate those from my life. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm getting rid of where I don't want to go be anymore. And by process of elimination, you end up with more things that will feed you and feed your good wolf right in front of you because you've eliminated the things that were feeding the bad wolf.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You've reminded me, I believe I came across it when I was looking at Christianity and I'd heard it. And it was a statement of like, don't make God or the Bible your spare tire, make it your steering wheel, right? Like that kind of way of thinking about it. Like, it's not just for a bad time. And I love what you're saying there because you're spot on that we struggle to get into a groove again because we forget what we did when things were good because we never.
And when they're going good, you think you're never going to forget them because you think, oh, this is it. This is the mean. This is how it will always be. Trust it. That hill's coming.
Yeah, and we remember the bad times more than the good times because when something good is happening, we celebrate for a day, and when something bad's happening, we cry for a month, and we get so immersed in that pain that you remember that pain. You have a good memory for pain, but we don't necessarily have a memory for movement and joy and growth.
Pleasure and success and those things. Yeah. And I know I have to watch this with me. When things are going really well, I'm like, aha, this, as I said, this is the mean. This is as it should be. And you can just sustain this. And if it goes below this, that's a debit. But it should always be this high. And it's just not fair. To ourselves or anyone else, because either we're going to create our own crisis for ourselves or the world's going to give us one that we didn't ask for. And we're going to have to adapt to something and be beneath that mean again. And it's good to have a little map, if you can, of wait, where was I? Where was my head? Where was my heart? How aligned were they in the decisions and choices I was making when I felt like life was one big green light? And you can go back and you can see how you can engineer them by our habits.
Yeah, it's like, using your beautiful metaphor, it's like remembering a route or a path to somewhere. Like when you knew you found that really cool path up that really beautiful road and it was quicker and faster. And if you never wrote it down, you just forget it. But tell us, you said like we all have three choices. You were like persist, pivot, or concede. Yeah. How have you decided in your life when to persist, when to pivot, and when to concede? Share some examples for those that you think would help people understand.
Let's bring up a situation, and if you can think of one, shoot it at me. And we can deconstruct these three on that.
Yeah. Look, well, maybe growing up to become a lawyer, like you thought you wanted to become a lawyer. That may be one.
Yeah. So I thought I wanted to become a lawyer. That was the in-house, in-family credo. That was it. I was a great debater. I would win arguments. I was tireless in them. I was in school debate in high school. This is it. Family business is going well. Shoot, the joke was you'll defend the family's business, Matthew. Go ahead. Great. I'm heading off. Great idea. I go to University of Texas, headed towards law school. Well, the first 2 years in school, what are you taking? You're taking liberal arts, filling out some credits. After that sophomore year, you better start knowing where you want to go because those credits, they have to fulfill the direction you're heading. And if you switch your majors, junior, senior, you can lose credits. Well, I was not sleeping well with the idea that I got to finish school here, then I got to go to law school, then I got to try to get a job. And then if I'm a practicing lawyer, I'm really not making a mark or experiencing anything until I'm in my 30s. I said, I'm not excited about the idea of spending my 30s getting educated in a classroom about something before I can actually practically experience it. So I had been writing, as you know, and I started sharing those writings with a friend of mine who was at NYU Film School. His name's Rob Bindler. He said the writings were good. And he also said, you know what? You got great character and confidence. You should think about it in front of the camera too. Well, that part I kind of didn't have the courage to even embrace the idea of being in front of the camera. It was too avant-garde. I came from a blue collar, work your way up. You had to be an actor. I mean, that's so European, you know what I mean? Or whatever. And so, what is that? Man, that'll never fly. But I could grasp the idea that, I want to go be a storyteller behind the camera. Now I got to call dad, mom, who are paying my schooling for this. I got to pivot. All right. Now, I could have kept my head down and just gone, no, this is just a pipe dream you got right now. Lawyer will work. Just follow it through. You'll be a damn good lawyer, which I believe I would have been. I could have persisted, but I said, no, I got to pivot here. Now, how do I pivot here? I got to get the approval of mom and dad, especially dad. And I don't think this is going to go over well with him. So let me make a plan how to reapproach this situation. I'm going to call him Tuesday night, 7:30. He'll be home from work. He'll have had dinner. He'll be having a beer on the couch with mom. He'll be in a great mood. He'll be able to digest this question better. I call him up and I said, Pop, he goes, hey, little buddy. I said, Dad, I don't want to go to law school more. I want to go to film school. And I hear this pause, 5 seconds. Then I hear this voice. Well, son, you sure that's what you want to do? I said, yes, sir. Another pause for 5 seconds. And then I heard 3 words that were a launch pad for me coming from my dad at that time. I couldn't have said anything better. And I did not expect this. 3 words were, well, don't half-ass it. Oh, thank you. Not only did you approve, you shot me out of a shotgun and said, this is more than privilege. You got your freedom here and you better do a damn good job at it. Whoa, it was freedom. And I was off. Went to film school, got confidence in telling stories, started working in front of the camera. And here I sit, 20, 30 years later. So I made a pivot at that time because the idea of continuing on to go down the path of being a lawyer, I wasn't sleeping well with it. It's always a good way for me to explain something. How are you sleeping with it? What's waking you up at night? The idea of doing it or the idea of losing it or missing it? It's a good way to measure kind of choices we want to make in life. Well, I do it with scripts all the time. I really want to do this. Well, let me sleep with the fact that I am going to do it for 2 weeks. And I'm going to see what wakes me up at night. Am I waking up because I'm going, oh man, I'm not sure if I trust that director or that script. Now I'm going to sleep with the fact that I'm not doing this. Now what keeps me up at night? Waking up going, no, I've got to do that project. I can't go without it. It's a good measuring stick for going, well, I think I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? So I wasn't sleeping well with the idea of being a lawyer. Things would have worked out in another way and probably okay if I would have done that. But my soul was itching and I was uncomfortable and I made a pivot at that time.
Yeah. That's a great one. Everyone who's listening and watching right now, I literally want you to write these 2 things down because these are practical things that you can do. And I know that my community loves stuff that they can actually do. The first one here was write down your wins, write down those grooves, write down when things are going in the right direction, the green lights and what's going right and how you're doing it, who you're around, what's happening. And the second one here, I love this piece of advice, like sleep with it as if you are going to do it. Right? Or sleep with it as if you're not going to do it. Like both of those are great. Great ways of testing which one you woke up feeling more excited about or nervous about or anxious about and what part of it. Like that's I love that. Like that's so practical. I've never thought about it like that. And I think I'm gonna play with that one too.
It's a cool decision-making paradigm if you can give yourself enough time to really commit in your mind, like, I'm doing this. And you'll start to realize, well, what does that mean for the next 6 months of my life, the next year? What am I going to miss out on? Or are you thinking about everything you're going to do with that? And it's more of a reason it's waking up at night because you just can't wait to get up and work on it. That's another thing that's saying, yeah, you probably ought to do it. There's good scared and there's bad scared.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's nice to go in any situation and be scared, but you let your spider sense say, wait, am I scared because this is a great challenge and I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I'm got the courage to dive in? Or am I scared because the pedigree around it isn't maybe up to the excellence that I want. And that's another kind of scared. You're like, I need to listen to that. Maybe that's a reason not to do it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I love that distinction between the two. And that links nicely to one of the other quotes that stuck out to me in the book, where you were like, when you can, ask yourself if you want to before you do. And I was like, yeah, that's real right there, because there's a lot of things. And actually, it's one of the biggest things I hear a lot of is I'm always encouraging people to move towards their purpose and things that fulfill them, and moving in that direction and pivoting as you did. And a big part of that question is, but I can do so many things, right? And that's a common thing where people are like, oh, but I could do this, I could do that, I could do this. But you have this really distinction. Ask yourself if you want to. Walk us through that and why that was such an important one to write down and push out.
Well, it worked its way into a nice little limerick riddle as it laid out. And it's got, there's different ways to look at the line. Look, too many options can make tyrants of all of us. Mm. The devil's in the yeses more than the no's. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there where, let's say me, after I got famous in the Time to Kill, my life did a 180. The Friday before Time to Kill came out, there were 100 scripts I wanted to do and would have done anything to do them. But 99 were no, you cannot do them. And one of them was yes. Mm. Well, over one weekend, I got a movie that does well, Time to Kill. That Monday, out of those 100 scripts, all of a sudden it was 99 or yes, they're yours. Go for it, please. They're all green lights. Please do them. One of them's no. And I'm going, oh, wait a minute. In a matter of 72 hours, I 3 days ago would have done any of this and couldn't do any. And now you're telling me I can do all of them? Well, like all of them look great. I mean, you're asking me to be discerning right now and to ask inside my soul when my head is just spinning, going, wait a minute. 2 days ago, I would have done any of these. How do I know what I want to do? I want to do all of them. But wait, Matthew, there's only 24 hours in the day. I know, but I need 90 hours in the day. Anybody giving that? Nope, they're not giving that. Still 24 hours in a day. What I got to do? Well, for me, I had to get the hell out of Dodge, get out of Hollywood and go hear myself think, let my memories catch up, let my brain get reconnected to my heart and soul, and get an Autobahn in there, because at that time, there was a 1-lane gravel road and it was bumpy driving, between the old head and the heart. So I took off and had to go try to listen to myself and get some sort of demarcations between all this frequency of options that were now on top of me. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. I was going to follow it up with what's the hardest no you think you've ever had to say? Like, what was like the one which you were like, this challenged me, where I wanted to say yes, but I had to follow my own advice and say no?
Well, the hardest no for me, and I'll base this on career, was about 14 years ago. And the story's in the book of when I was rom-com king.
Okay.
They were fun. They were easy. I loved doing them. I was getting paid big bank for doing them.
We missed them. My wife does, for sure.
I hope maybe I still got another good one in me out there. They were making money for the studios. I was the go-to rom-com guy. And like I said, they were Saturday characters. They were easy. There was nothing wrong with that. But I was feeling very vital in my life. Yeah. I just had a newborn son. I'd met the woman that I'm now married to, and I loved harder. I could get angrier harder. I laughed louder. My life was like vital, and I was like, boy, my life's so much more vital than my work. I wish I could find some characters that would challenge the vitality of my own life, the man I'm in, the man I am, and the life I'm living. So I wanted dramas. I was looking for these dramas. Well, those dramas weren't coming. So this goes back to process of elimination. If I can't get what it is I want to do, I'm going to stop doing what it is I've been doing that's not filling me up.
Right.
So I made a staunch stance and said, I'm not going to do the rom-coms anymore. I'm not doing the action adventures. Well, guess what? If you're not going to do those, McConaughey, you may not be working for a while. And that was true. Mm. For 20 months, I didn't work.
It's a long time.
15 of those 20 months, I got offered zero, nada, zilch. I was gone. I thought Hollywood may have forgot about me. So it was a big no. the hardest no, because I'm sitting there this time getting offered $15 million offers for well-written, cool romantic comedies. I'm like, that's pretty damn good. And by the way, it's even better. The version at $15 million is a better script than the one that was offered at $8 million, even though they were the same words. I was like, well, so I looked at those things, but I said, no, I made this choice with myself. I made this choice with God. I made this choice with my wife, Camilla. My family knows about it. I really need to go through this dry period. I don't know how long it's going to last. I got to hang on to the belief that if it's to be, something will come up. The work I want to find will come up and find me. And sure as heck, 20 months into it, all of a sudden, I was a new good idea. So I had an unbranding 2-year phase. I didn't rebrand. I unbranded. I was gone. I wasn't in the rom-coms. You didn't see me on the beach without a shirt. Where's McConaughey? I don't know. He's forgotten. Forget it. Don't even send him another script because he's not going to do it. It's a rom-com. All of a sudden, someone's going, it'd be good for Killer Joe, Magic Mike, Mud, True Detective, Dallas Buyers Club. McConaughey'd be a good idea. It's kind of an interesting, it's a novel idea now. It wasn't novel 2 years before. So that was a big time where I dug my heels in and said no. That's eliminated what it was I was doing to then find and be found and offered what it is I wanted to do and who I wanted to become.
That's a great connection to that answer. Like I wasn't thinking of that when I said that. That's a great connection to that, because almost unbranding or unlearning, or almost like you said, disappearing is the hardest way of refinding your identity, because you don't know what the next step is. So there's a leap in that darkness. There's that
you're consciously and deliberately and intentionally throwing yourself into limbo.
Yeah.
Which is the worst thing. We're all in a certain limbo right now. It's the most uncomfortable part. It's part of the reason our country's divided so wide right now, because people need purpose, identity, and something to cling on to. So they're clinging on to the fringes just to have a sense of, okay, at least I'm about something. I don't know if I agree with what it's about, but at least I'm about something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's you're throwing yourself into a limbo. And then look, I had help. I had a great wife next to me helping me out. I had a newborn son, which was my North Star compass every day. Every time I get antsy, what am I doing? I have no significance in my life. I don't know what I'm going to do. I was like, well, look at your family. Look at that young man right there that you were part of creating and that you can raise as a father. It's a brand new day for him every single day. Let's try and see what he's seeing, or put things in front of him that are going to make him go, I like this next day. So that gave me an anchor during that time when I had some times of being quite wobbly.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, man. I think that is a great lesson for all of us. And it's so funny that, when I was reading your book, and literally in the last couple of weeks, I've been talking to my team, because I've been coming off, like I was saying to you earlier, my book space. And I was looking at 2021 and I was kind of having this moment where I was like, and it literally timed when I was reading your book. I was like, I need to start saying no next year. Like, that's my next challenge. Like, my challenge next year is to go deeper in what I've committed to and do it better, and go into just immersing myself into it, rather than trying to do all these things. Where at one point in my life, it was really important that I was trying to do a lot of things. And now
you're probably being offered to do things you've never been able to offer to do before.
Totally. And it's like,
yeah, please. Thank you. I'd love to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm literally in that phase of my life right now, in this phase of it, where I'm like, okay, well, actually, I need to stop that. So it just came so perfectly timed, and it was so interesting. I was saying to someone the other day, I was like, there's all these opportunities, but it's not going to work if I just keep chasing them. And I loved how you brought that back to relationships, because this part of it, I think, and the relationship you have with your kids, your wife, is beautiful, but it's like, it's really interesting the way you explain it. Like, the arrow doesn't seek the target draws the arrow. Yeah. And you said that you weren't even in a space where you were seeking partnership. You weren't even looking for it. And I think this is, when you just said that, like, even though I didn't know what was next and I unbranded myself, but I had my son and I could look at what I'd created. I think for a lot of people, they're struggling because even their relationship world is in limbo, whether they don't have the right partner or they don't have a partner, and their work life's kind of going, but they don't have that. Where was it for you where you felt you attracted your wife? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah. So We all have our biological clock and our idea when we're younger. When do we see ourselves, having a meeting that woman or that man, and then having a family, and then those years come up on us. I'd never really been a time clock keeper, but subconsciously, I was at a time in my life where I sure as heck didn't want to date anybody unless I thought it had possibilities of becoming a full, true, long-term relationship.
Yeah.
I wasn't wanting to waste my time dating someone unless that potential was there. And if there wasn't, it's time for us to move on. And we had some amiable breakups with some wonderful women that we just both saw, hey, this is not going to, we both want to find the one that we have more potential. We've gotten to a point as far as I think we can go. So, but I did find myself looking. I found myself in the produce section at the store, looking down. I wonder if she's going to ring her finger. I wonder maybe I'll say hi to her. I was looking, at the red light, at a club or a bar, or a friend would introduce. And what I did in my own thoughts and meditation and prayers on what came to me was, it's okay, Matthew. Don't try so hard to find the right woman to start a family. I know the one thing you've only known you ever wanted to be was a father, but you don't try so hard to find the right woman to get married. You might end up an 88-year-old bachelor with a bunch of kids. And I'm not going to judge you on that, but quit trying to make it happen. And as soon as I quit trying to make it happen, and what I was out and not sort of measuring women, like maybe there's a possibility, maybe not objectifying, like, well, I don't know. I was more present. I was more fun. I was more me. And as soon as I quit looking, that's when she came. Not the same way I did, but when she showed up and I saw her, my life moving across the room, right to left in my eye line. And I remember I saw this woman and under my breath to myself, I said, what is that? I didn't say, who is it? I said, what is that? I got up, introduced myself, spoke the best Spanish I've ever spoken. I've never spoken that good of Spanish since. And since that night I met her, there's never been another woman I wanted to go on a date with, spend a night with, anything. And she's now mother of 3 of our children. And we've been married now for, what are we coming on? 8-9 years. Mm. And that's when I was able to find her. That's when I was able enough. It goes back to a little one of those earlier lessons with my father moving on, be less impressed, more involved.
Yes.
That's when I was comfortable to be myself and give her space, because I wasn't like trying to dissect. Wait, are you the one? I wasn't measuring her. I was able to be myself, hold my own constitution. She was able to be herself, and we naturally came together. So it drew the target drew the arrow. Yeah. When I quit looking, that's when I found the one for me.
I have to ask, do you dream a lot, Matthew? Do you remember your dreams a lot when you dream?
I remember ones like that.
You never forget that.
I do dream a lot. And like most people, most dreams, I forget most of them. But I have had a few that are consistent, that have been recurring dreams. And when I have a recurring dream that is note for note, shot for shot, exactly the same dream, I take that as a sign, celestial suggestion, at least, that my subconscious is trying to tell me something, or my God is trying to tell me something. And I try to back up and go, okay, I need to listen to this. And you can't go to someone else for advice about it, because it's only your dream, and It was a dream. So you have to really go, how much merit do I give this?
Yeah.
And you were talking about it earlier. The truth, sometimes we miss the green lights around us. They're there.
Yeah.
Are we in a place to receive them? Are we in a place to be patient enough to make them personal and see why they came to us? Then are we courageous enough to act on them and preserve them and make them part of our daily habits and inner being?
Yeah.
They come around all the time. And as you know, you can't listen to every sign.
No.
Or you're running circles. I've done that before.
Yeah.
And everything, you're seeing art everywhere. Oh my gosh, I got that quote in there about a man full of ideas needs some starvation. A man full of truths needs to be fed. Well, I've had those times where I'm full of so many ideas. I'm inspired everywhere. And I'm going, I got to cut some of this out because there's too much inspiration. I can't I can't focus. There's a shotgun spread and I need a rifle here. And at the same time, you don't want to be so closed up that you're missing them or you let them pass and you don't give them credit when they come.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. One of your dreams, obviously not a dream while you were asleep, was to become a father. Like that was always been a big thing for you. What was it that you dreamed of about being a father that you looked forward to so much? And how is it being how has that been completely surpassed in reality?
Yeah. So,
because I'm not a father yet. So I'm,
you're not,
I'm
okay.
not yet. Yeah.
Okay. So I remember when I was 8 years old, having this romantic realization that the reason my dad wanted me to call the men that he would introduce me to sir and shake their hand and look them in the eye, which I was looking up at their eye as a young 8-year-old boy. It came to me that what's the one consistency in all these men that I am giving them the respect of, yes, sir. Why am I calling them sir? Because they're fathers. And I remember at 8 years old going, oh, that's it. That's when you've made it. That's success as a male on earth to become a father. So to me, that was like, ta-da, one day, then you've made it, Matthew. That was always very clear to me since I was 8 years old. And the one thing I always knew I wanted to be. Now I have children. You have the first, if and when you do have. I write about it in the book, the first 6 months after you have your firstborn, don't double down, triple down on any instinct you have. Man is never more masculine and clear. The man's heart and head and spirit are never more aligned than right after he has a firstborn. Triple down on any instincts you got, career-wise, relationship-wise, everything. You're in the zone.
Good to know.
And so then you have them. The thing that, one of the surprising things, and all parents I think know this, is that before having children, I thought it was more about environment than it was DNA. You have children and you realize real early, no, it's more about biology than I thought. They kind of are who they are. I can nudge them and shepherd them and move them their way and put in front of them what turns them on and try to keep them from dangerous harm, but they are who they are. The best thing that I didn't notice about having children before I had children is that now I'm immortal. I'm immortal. Hopefully they have kids, and that's the lineage. So now when whatever perceivable shadow we leave when we're gone, that's the shadow I want to leave. That's the shadow that will keep me alive forever. That's the just keep living shadow right there. You become immortal when you become a father or a parent. A mother becomes immortal.
That's great. That's great advice. That's beautiful. What's a skill or a quality that you think you're most wanting to see them develop, and vice versa? What's something that you think they've taught you about yourself that you didn't expect? Camille
and I are hoping to raise them, whatever they individually, in their own individual ways, to be conscientious, autonomous, and confident people. We value family. We also value self-reliance. I want to, and you'll see if and when you become a parent, you have to measure. Kids aren't afraid to fall off out of a tree until they fall. So how high on that limb do you let them go before telling them, no, come down.
Yeah.
Because for the first time when you do that, they're like, what? What's the big, and all of a sudden they get nervous.
Yeah.
So you measure in life, and it's a metaphor, the tree limb, but you measure, well, and I'm going to be cool, because if they fall from that one, they may just scrape their arm and bruise themselves, and that'll be worth it. I don't want to ruin the innocence and purity that they have. But then all of a sudden they get up to a limb tall enough, you're like, dude, if they fell from that, we're going to the hospital. I think I may need to tell them to come on down, but for the first time, you're going to make them conscious.
Yeah.
You're going to have to put on the fig leaf.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to measure that and let them negotiate situations on themselves, for themselves, let them, the three of them, don't interrupt every time the three of them are arguing or they're arguing with their friends. Let them negotiate. That's real life. They're going to get out. The world's not just going to lay out a carpet for them.
Yeah.
In my life, we're an affluent family. I want to give my children a lot. I want them to own up to where the affluence that we have, but damn sure not rely on it.
Yeah.
And then also, how do we define success? It's a very interesting thing. Look up the earliest Webster Dictionary version of success to today's version of success. Today is about, it mentions like fame and money and all these things. And the original version talks about integrity. And so what is success? What do they want to be relevant for? They're all three very kind children. Some more, one of them's more conscientious than the other two. One of them's the comedic relief in the family, but smart as a whip. The other one is very creative, but doggone it, doesn't know where she put her glasses and they're on her face. The other one, when you're looking for your glasses, he reminds you they're on your face. You know what I mean? So they're different. Some of them are very practical at times. Some of them are very whimsical. They're all very, very kind. And I hope they're conscientious, autonomous, and confident with who they are, and have the ability to, we still say, we never say, don't talk to strangers. No, we travel the world and we're like, yes, go introduce yourself. Go ask them. No, I'm not going to do it for you. Go. I'll be over here watching. Engage. The world's a good place. There's evil in it. We have to, but I don't want to get you gun shy about the harms in the world before, you realize some of them yourself, and let them engage in some where they may have the bruise or the scrape. I don't want to engage them in the ones that send them to the hospital, but engage in the ones that you come away going, oh, that didn't feel like what I thought. As I said, now so selfish, well, that's another thing. I can get into what I feel about that word selfish and unpack that, because I'm a fan of that word, because I think
go for it.
The most selfish is actually being the most selfless. People, look at what we're in now and all the change we're going through. I don't know how to make systemic change. I don't know how to write policy. But each one of us know how to look ourselves in the mirror and say, how can I do a little bit better?
Yeah.
How can I value values a little bit more for myself? And if I do that, you do that, and another person listening does that, well, all of a sudden, we start forming a collective. And that collective will be better. Yeah. It will be a more valuable society.
Yeah.
So what is that spot where the choice, I call it the egotistical utilitarian. Where's that spot where the choices we make for us? Yes, I'm doing this for me. My ego wants to do this. Where does that I meet the we?
Yes.
Where does the want meet the need and the need meet the want?
Yeah.
Where do we look as good as we feel and feel as good as we look? You know what I mean? Where do those overlap? And that seems to me to be the honey hole.
Yeah.
That I'm trying to unpack and continually chase, knowing I'm never going to get there. But I think that's what it's about.
Totally.
Chasing yet. That's what our lives are about. That's what America's about. It's an aspiration. And if we have the will and the want to go, you know what? I want to incrementally, I incrementally believe life is going to have an evolutionary small ascension, but things can improve just a little bit. Or what the hell are we growing older for? What's experience for? If we're not, if there's not at least a little ascension, and keep chasing that, stay in the race, commit to the chase of that. And that is as close to destination as we get, again, maybe it'll be realized 2 generations later,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few things in there. There's a Sanskrit word called dharma, which has lots of translations, but one of them is purpose. And purpose is seen as the meshing of passion and compassion. And so what you were saying there of like that understanding of like, that egotistic utilitarian of like, where is it that I feel like I'm winning and we're winning, like, and it's having an impact, like, because you're not going to find it in either or. Like if you get obsessed with just your egotistical pursuits, we all know where that goes. And if you just get obsessed with trying to make a difference and trying to serve, but you don't feel like you are playing your part in a way that fulfills you, it's, it's unsustainable too. And the point you were saying about, the point you were saying about children. Yeah. The point you were saying about children too, I found that really interesting, because something I always kind of wonder about before I have kids is like fragility, and like, what is my fragility barrier or limit for my kids? Because what you're saying there is like, we reflect our fragilities and insecurities onto them. And I remember I had a couple of friends who, I remember their daughter, probably, I don't know, like 2 years old, was like on the other side of the room. and there were candles there, and she was just playing with the candles, like her hands were over the fire. And I don't have kids, but my instinctual response was like, guys, she's gonna burn us. So like, we need to go save her. And they were like, nope. Like that was their limit. Like they were like, nope, let her play with the fire. It's only a tiny candle. If she hurts herself, she'll know. And I was like, wow, like, I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying,
yeah. I mean, she'll go out. She'll remove her hand from the fire before she's actually really burned. And she'll know from now on that glowing thing is hot. Hurt. And it won't do it again. Usually won't do it again.
Yeah.
And we can be told what to do. We can be taught what to do. People can give us advice, but really we don't like to be told what to do.
No.
Nobody does. Kids don't even like to be told what to do.
No one does.
If you go experience something and you have a parent, or you have friends that let you go, give it a shot. Maybe you can pull it off. I didn't pull it off. I wasn't able to pull up. Sometimes you'll see them pull off stuff. You're like, oh, you just changed my reality.
Yeah.
I couldn't pull that off, but you did.
Yeah.
You can jump further. I didn't think you could make it over that creek, and you did. Whoa. Bravo. Okay. You've redefined my measuring paradigm for the situation now. So sometimes they can surprise us.
Yeah.
Because they have more of a talent for something than we ourselves do.
Yeah.
The other thing to answer that question about what have they taught me, when we first had kids, before we had kids, Camilla said to me, one condition. So what's that? She goes, you go, we go, which means my work takes me all over the world. And up to that point, I'd always gone off on my own, lived in my Airstream trailer with my dog. I don't go out on school nights. I go to work in the morning. I come home, fix my... meal, have a drink, study tomorrow's work, go to bed over and over and over. I don't see anybody, nothing. All of a sudden, I'm like, my family there. Wait, I can't be an artist with my family there. But of course, the good voice, the smart voice, my other ear said, you better say yes, ma'am, right now, sir. And I went, yes, ma'am. Anyway, it turned out to be the most wonderful thing for creativity as well.
Yeah.
When I'm doing, as you know, I've done a lot of hardcore dramas that happen to be like R-rated that my kids cannot see.
Mm-hmm.
But how it's been great for me when I come home and my kids, 5-year-old, goes, so what's this movie about? And I've got to tell them in the version that can make it sound fabelic or make it sound where they're with it and they think it sounds really, really cool and interesting in a G-rated way. So that's been really good for my creativity to answer those simple questions from my kids when I get home from work. Or why are you doing this job? Why are you taking this role? Great. Thank you for asking me that. Let me see if I can give you a satisfactory answer. And if I can't, it's another measurement that we see earlier. Well, maybe I don't have this down yet.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I love that. That's beautiful because I think, especially as someone as successful an artist as you, it's so easy to get wrapped up in like, this is how I get the most creative, or this is my optimal performance level, or I know how to get in the zone. And that can sometimes be our greatest block to actually getting into the zone in a completely different way.
Yeah, I'm very much, I had a great mentor of mine who would tell me, Matthew, you work so hard and prepare so hard for a scene. You love to go in any situation balanced, both feet balanced. You love to go in like this. She goes, I'm going to tell you this. I dare you to start looking at life and your work right before you go into it. Get on one leg and see if you can find your balance, because in finding your balance is when you're most alive. Yeah. In finding the balance, the stable position is when life's a verb and you see life come and life really happens. And it was a great note, not just in work, but in life. Go into a situation and instead of coming in set, locked in, do the work that you know how to be sturdy and balanced, but go into it intentionally off balance and find your balance.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that. I can, my head's like applying that to a million things right now. That is so beautiful. I love that. I love the fact that when we're off balance, that's when we're most alive. It's when we're most animated, searching, seeking, like looking, like as soon as you feel like you've got it, it just, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I love that. And in your book, in the last chapter, you talk about the 10 goals you set out to achieve. And we were just talking about your kids achieving things that you didn't see yourself achieving. You had your life goals written out. Have you surprised yourself? Did you always feel convinced it was going to happen? Which ones have been the ones that surprised you, and which ones are the ones where like, yeah, I saw that?
Well, it's a funny thing because here's why I didn't surprise myself, because when I wrote those 10 goals down in 1989, I forgot about them the next day. I never looked at them again. Forgot I had written them. But obviously I didn't forget I wrote them because I accomplished all 10, although I consciously never looked at them again or remembered them even in a mental list in my mind.
Wow.
So I guess the best I can tell is that, you wrote down some really true goals for yourself, McConaughey, because you didn't even have to write them down. They were written inside you with the unwritten word because you accomplished them. Now, look, there's some in there that I pulled off. I'm like, what? In 1989, you didn't even know you were going to be an actor. You wouldn't even admit you wanted to be an actor. And you wrote down you wanted to win an Academy Award for Best Actor? What? Didn't look at that for 29 years and found it writing this book. And I went, okay. Want to be a father, keep God in my life, family, live a life where I could look forward looking back. I had some pretty cool aspirations that for the most part I've have succeeded in some way in achieving.
Yeah. It's special to see that. And I love that it was again planted as a seed, but you weren't obsessed about it in a
Right.
practical way, because it's that obsession that almost makes you feel so far away from it. If you're constantly like looking at it every day going, oh, where is that? And you're only looking at the Oscar, whereas actually for you, it was that, that pivot of like, I've been doing these types of movies and I feel like I need to unbrand my, all of that was what got you the Oscar. It wasn't obsessing over the Oscar.
You're exactly right. And look, your word purpose, let's deconstruct that in this way for myself as well as everyone else, because that clarity of purpose to see something and go accomplish it. I love that.
Yeah.
I need that. It gives me significance, achievement. Oh, I can measure it. I wanted to do that today and I got that done. This is what I wanted and I got that. But it's a dance because not everything is like that. And I don't, if you have for instance, in my work, I wouldn't have gone and done work that was deemed excellent, a la win an Academy Award, or done whatever work I've done that anyone may deem excellent. I wouldn't have been as good at it. I wasn't as good at it until I had a family that came first. When it was my top goal, I was more it was more about the result. Mm. When I had family and I was like, oh, well, there we go. Now I've made it. Acting was number 2. Didn't mean I worked any less hard at it. If anything, I worked harder at it, but I was all about the process. I've gotten so many more results when I didn't give a damn about the result. It's like that, best rounds of golf. When you walk off the 18th hole and you're headed to the next tee box and they go, no, you finished the round. You're like, oh, I didn't even know I was over the round. Oh yeah, you shot 63. What?
Yeah.
My best work is when we wrap and I'm like, okay, everyone, I'll see you tomorrow morning. And they're like, no, there is no tomorrow morning. The show's over. And I'm like, oh, that's it? It's the Bo Jackson. He didn't run across the goal line. He ran across the goal line through the end zone up the tunnel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like extend your finish line to a place that you're like, oh, it's like now dealing with COVID. I think it's very good for us to think, what if this is going on for another 3 years?
Mm.
We'll probably be able to engage somewhat normally before then.
Yeah.
But if I think that in my mind, I'm already starting to get my purpose and survival skills are coming to the forefront. I'm preparing. If I'm thinking, oh, I hope COVID's over tomorrow, I'm wasting 30% of my energy thinking, is tomorrow the day? And then I wake up and go, oh, not today.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe tomorrow. No, not tomorrow. You're wasting energy. So it's a good practice, I think, to put things way out in front of you that are beyond your reach.
Yeah.
So then they don't stay in that first place. You can't quite grasp them. They're not tangible. And you'll actually probably have a better chance of achieving them if you just put your head down and stay in the process.
I love that, man. Everyone, that is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Make sure you grab the book. We're putting the link in the comments. I highly recommend it. If you want to be entertained, enlightened, and have an experience at the same time, it's a perfect journey in that. And if you want to learn more about someone that you've been watching for so many years and loving and appreciating, then this is the book to go to. Matthew, we end every episode with a fast 5. These are the final 5 questions, and they have to be answered in 1 word to 1 sentence maximum. So
deal.
That's the deal. And you've already been very generous with your time. So this is... This is the last thing. So your first question is, what was your biggest lesson from the last 12 months?
Make sense of humor your default emotion.
Nice. I like it. Awesome. All right. Question number 2. What's something you know to be true, but other people would disagree with you on? What's something that you're like very confident about, but people may not agree with you?
Spending time alone and not enjoying the company is a healthy, constructive practice, because there's only one person we're stuck with in this life.
Spending time alone and not enjoying the company is a constructive choice.
Stick with it. Don't pull the parachute in the discomfort. You will work it out. The monkeys on your back will finally start playing and then swinging from the trees in a right way, and it will get organized. Don't pull the parachute in the discomfort. Stick through it. Because if you pull out too early, when you're not getting along with yourself, it's going to bubble up in awkward ways later on, and you're going to be forced to go through the penance. So stick with it. You'll come out the other side. You'll shake hands with yourself, and you realize there's only one person I can't get rid of, and that's me. We better get along. Figure it out.
I love that. That's great advice. I had many moments like that in my monk life, so I could definitely relate to sticking through that. Okay, question number 3. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Invisible.
That's the one.
Yeah, I gotta just take the easy, low hanging fruit and go, and then just say, okay, now that you're invisible, let's see if you can handle this great freedom.
Yeah.
That's a real tester there. That's the one that'll challenge somebody the most. But what can you do with that power?
It is true. It is true.
Can you be trusted with that power?
Yeah. Can you trust yourself with it? And can you deal with what it exposes you to?
Yep.
Yeah. Those are challenges. Absolutely. All right. Question number 4. When does a risk not make sense? Because as you were saying, your father wanted you to take risks. You've taken loads of risks in your life. You know, there's plenty of examples in the book. When does a risk not make sense?
When it's for risk's sake. It's like, an eccentricity for eccentricity's sake.
Yeah.
Like, well, what the hell is that for?
Yeah.
I like to see, is there construction? Is this a constructive risk?
Yeah.
Is taking this risk, what can it pay? What can I get from it?
Yeah.
What will be the green light in this? What is my ROI?
Mm-hmm.
Return on investment of taking this risk. And like I said, it's not a risk unless you can lose a fight. It's not really a risk unless you can lose a fight.
Yeah. Well said. All right. Fifth and final question. If you could create a law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be?
It's not a law, but I'll say this. Great question for all of us to ask ourselves every day. And it will change. This answer changes. Great question to ask ourselves is this, 2 words. I value. Question mark. Yeah, because we all, I bring this up in the book about we all want to be relevant. Damn right we do. But let's not forget to ask relevant for what? What really matters? What's going to pay? Think long money, not short money. What's the long ROI? What's the big eternal green light? Tee yourself up for the future, as much as you can, I value is a great question that